So I'd like to invite to the panel, could I please have the Executive Chairman for Margins ID Group, Moses Baden. Please join me on stage. Could I please have Charles Antipim, founder of Dext Technology. Please join me on stage. Could I please have the Executive Secretary, Vice President of the Republic of Ghana. So he's the Secretary to Vice President of the Republic of Ghana, Mr. Augustine Blay. And to moderate this panel discussion, could I please have Ghana's head of trade, not the new Kofi Adu, I've been told, not the new Kofi Adu, the head of trade and investment, Mr. Papa Kobartels. Round of applause for my panel. Last thing to say is, if you are going to ask a question, please do stand up so people can zoom in and hear what you've got to say. Thank you very much. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Michael. I have been so impressed about the delivery of our Minister for Communication. She's given an excellent resume of Ghana's effort at digitizing, and just like Michael said, E is the way to go now. So the letter E is a new name for Ghana. And welcome, Moses. Welcome, everybody. I think that the effort that government is putting in is an indication of where government wants to go. Now, I want you to plug in and then download within 2 minutes the effort that Margins is putting in at ensuring that you move in sync with what the minister just spoke about. She's said some very impressive things, just like Michael said, everything. So what is Margin doing to ensure that you push that agenda forward?
Basically, you said everything. Ghana's digitizing, and that's important for this era because this era of fourth industrial revolution is a time when Ghana and Africa can leapfrog to catch up with the rest of the world. And the government's digitization initiative is very welcome because it seeks to base decision-making, planning, and government policy on data. Hardcore data that leaves out guessing and thereby cuts out mistakes. In this digitization era, everything that we know before is going to change. As the minister mentions, by removing the human factor, we can take e-governance direct to the citizens. And we can accelerate the pace of development, social, economic, and political development. Margins is an example of a private sector company that's 30 years old, introduced identification into Ghana, and over the course of the 30 years has followed the dematerialization and digitization of the world economy. Now, in this case, Margins is an idea of how the private sector can partner government in delivering efficiently services. Governments are very good at what they do, and this government definitely is on the right track with digitization. But government by itself has its own inherent processes and bureaucracy by which it seeks to achieve its objectives. It's important that the private sector, which is a risk-taking segment of our economy, and which also is in the market innovating on inventions and ideas, partners the government, because this sort of private sector, public sector dialogue and partnership will accelerate faster government's idea of digitization. In that equation, we as a company pioneering identity 30 years ago is supporting the government in its agenda to give every Ghanaian a digital identity that's capable of allowing them to access government services and accelerating e-commerce, right from passports, as the minister mentions, to visas, to paying bills, to free SHS, to all the other government policies that will be enhanced. You can say you're giving the policy steroids because of the digitization. And it will bring citizens closer to government, and it will certainly increase and deepen the digitization index, which will have a multiple effect on GDP and economic and social and political advancement. Thank you.
Thank you. Charles, one other major thing that I got from the minister's speech was the effort at shoring up ICT and then ensuring that every child in Ghana would have access to education. You are already, doing something that has gained worldwide recognition. Can you say within 2 minutes, just like I threw to Moses, what you are doing to ensure that you enhance the digital revolution that Ghana has embarked on?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. So at Dex Technology, what we're doing is spearheading the design and manufacturing of the tools that are required to train young Ghanaians when it comes to 21st century skills. So currently, the product that we have is called Dex Science Set, and it is the world's most user-friendly and cost-effective toolbox to teach students about things like robotics, like electronics, and other very interesting 21st century skills. And one other interesting thing is that we are doing this using West Africa's first 3D printing, improved 3D printing for medium-scale manufacturing setup in Kumasi that we have. So we work with schools across the country, and we also, out of Ghana, exporting these tools across Africa and across the world, where they are being used to help students learn these important skills.
So what you've done is a made in Ghana thing. I would call it an e-Ghana, because excellent Ghana product that you're exporting to the world. Thank you. Augustine, I know that the Vice President is just upbeat about everything electronic. What is it? Can you tell me exactly what it is that gives the Vice President that passion to support the effort at digitalization?
Thank you very much. I think I would like to greet my bosses, ministers, Alan, Vonkroma, Esla. Thank you for the wonderful delivery. What drives the Vice President in the digital era is two things. One is financial inclusion, and the second one is reducing corruption. Because every time you have the human interface in service delivery, there's always an opportunity to frustrate the service receiver. And so to be able to get to that financial inclusion and then reduce corruption, there are a couple of building blocks that the Vice President identified, I think, that we have to put in place. The first one is the national ID that Moses' company is doing. That's the first building block. Once you have that building block established, then you're asking yourself, for this person, where does the person live, right? Where does he stay? Then you must then answer the question of addressing. So you know this person lives at this place. And then we have this emerging trend of having a lot of our citizens using mobile money for their transaction. To be able to bring the unbanked into the formal sector, then you have to make it easy for the unbanked to join the formal transaction enterprise. So then we went ahead and built a mobile money interoperability. Now, the Honorable Minister of Communication leading the drive to make sure that all SIM cards in Ghana will have to be registered, linked to the ID, the card. So what happens is that every person in Ghana that has a phone card will have his biometric identity identified. That then built a certain confidence in the system, in the banking sector, in the financial inclusion industry, to say anyone that needs money, needs a loan, or needs to conduct business, we know who the person is, we know where the person lives. And these are the building blocks that will lead to that financial inclusion and reducing that the frustration that citizens have. Beyond that, you must now begin to look at how do we then make it easy for citizens to engage government, right? So we are now talking about the Ghana.gov platform, and what that platform does is that for all the government services, we shall have it at one place. So you can go in there, identify the service quickly, pay for it, and go and receive the service. And these things we can do these things because the pillars are in place. And this then provides a lot more opportunity to all the investors to see, well, if Ghana has these building blocks in place, then what else can we do? It creates a whole lot of opportunities. We can look at subsidy management, property rate management. You can look at all of these things that exist. I think I'll pause here and then I will continue.
Good. I'm still going to come
I can
to
keep
you.
going if you want.
Yes, I know. I just, based on what you said,
Yeah.
if you look into the crystal ball, and let's say we give ourselves 2050, right? Well, somebody says it's so far away.
It's far away.
Yes, yeah, because I'm seeing a futuristic, Ghana. But let's bring it closer. Let's say 2030.
Yeah.
How would Ghana look like? How would Ghana shape out for engagement with the rest of the world?
Ghana.
And I'm going to ask all of you the same question.
I think I'll stay with the same tangent. You can see in Ghana, the informal economy is so huge. You have a lot of people in the marketplaces still dealing with cash. We have a lot of cash outside of the formal sector, which have a drain on the economy. So how do you then formalize all this cash, bring it in, and then you're going to have our economy grow? And that's where we want to get to. So the question that we need to answer and help our country answer is that how do we bring all this cash in the formal sector? This is where, in the near short term, how do we then eliminate check writing completely from the system? How do we get, for example, when you go to buy the Kofi Brookman or the Wache seller, so in March, Gibbs is going to publish the QR code standard. What that QR code does is that when you are going to buy anything from any merchant, the banking sector have to take it and then implement it. But when they go there, they'll be able to pay by scanning the QR code, and the money move from the customer's account to the seller's account. That will reduce the cost of transactions because the informal sector, the informal vendor, doesn't have to go and buy a POS machine to then add cost to its production. You can just go scan it and you have it. A lot of our citizens do not have smartphones. So we have to push the envelope to leverage that YAM phone, right? Two things. Either we reduce the cost of purchasing the smartphone.
I was just going to ask you that.
And also reduce the cost of data, right? So this is where we are getting to see that e-Kofi or e-Ama or e-Yao, right, actively involved in the digital economy in the near future, and Ghana leading the way in Africa.
All right, thank you. Charles.
Same
question.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a millennial, and we have been known to not be very patient. So I'll bring you forward a bit. I'm going to tell you what I think will happen in the next 15 years in Ghana.
Yeah.
I think that within the next 15 years, it's very likely that Ghana will start exporting skill. The reason why I think that is take in our case, for instance, whereas a few years ago, it was hard for students to get, this is a simple component to learn about electronics in school. But today in Ghana, students are learning about robotics and students are learning about electronics
and winning awards.
Using a science lab that they're carrying around in their bags and winning awards all over the world. And so I think that is one really strong point. If you take, for instance, the Ghana Technology Lab, last year, it trained more than 500 people in AI. So there's a lot of things happening in the space of skill development. And I think that's one of the really, really powerful things that could happen within the next few years, that there will be a large concentration of people who are heavily skilled in engineering, in STEM, and I believe it's very likely that Ghana will start exporting these skills.
Fantastic. Moses.
Yes, yeah. I'm not a millennial, but I agree. And originally, I'm a lawyer, not a tech guy, right?
Yes.
But it's a demonstration that if we look at the age that we're in, as the minister said, we're not talking 2030, we're talking now. And the reason is that if we actually focus on the initiatives and the building blocks that Augustine talked about, we'll create an environment where learning is global. It means that, just take an example, if the best physics teacher in Ghana can compile an e-lecture that's available online to all schools, I mean all schools, one age to the other, he'll be much more effective than 1,000 mediocre physics teachers. So following this digital imperative, we're able to reach everybody everywhere. It will make strategic decisions enough to ensure that the building blocks that Augustine talked about are in place. So 2030 is so far away. Let's talk about 2021 or 2022. Because by March, when the National Identification Authority is done with the mass registration of all Ghanaians, we expect to have 12.5 million people in the database, above 15, which will leave us with, if you look at the census, will leave us with almost not more than 4 million people left to be captured, 15 and above. Now, what does that mean? It means that, say by end of May, we'll have 16.2 million Ghanaians who have the national ID card. The implication of that, and the National ID Authority is trying to educate the public, but there's so much to say that for now they're just focused on the registration. But 16.2 million people will have e-passports, which is on the same level as a German passport, for free. The economic impact of that is that if you take an e-passport to be about €100, total cost recovery, plus sustainability, we would have delivered $1.62 billion of value for free to all Ghanaians above 15. So 2030 is far. Now, if you establish that digital identity of Ghanaians, don't forget that the card has 14 applications. Include national insurance is going to go on that, the GRA is going to go on that, the banks are going to go on that. So apart from financial inclusion, you're going to have social inclusion. Because if you credential to any banking digital platform, you will have immediately the core KYC data automatically populated. So KYC is now eKYC, right? The rules of the Uniform Account Opening regulations by the BOG will be automatically complied with, which means that everybody can have a banking account without actually going to a physical bricks and mortar place. If I continue to talk, it will take a day. But just magnify that across all social, political, economic segments. And you see 2030, if we are successful, is so far away. In that sense, I agree with the minister. I'm a millennial, and that's I'm an eternal optimist. I think by 2022, Ghana is going to be a very transformed country, starting from March 2020.
Okay.
So 2030 is really far. I believe that in 24 months, in another few months, the building blocks will be almost complete. Yeah. Another 24 months, if we persevere, and as a country, we understand the importance of having this digital identity infrastructure in place, connected to all the different building blocks, then, we're talking 24 months, and I believe that if we push, we can get this through. Thank you.
Good. If we push, we'll get it through. I've just been told that there are itchy mouths out there. People want to ask questions. So I just opened the floor. I've not finished, and hands are going up. So yes, the gentleman there.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the Honourable Minister for her speech. It was music to my ears. And also thank you for the comments from the panel as well. My name is Frank Ewuku. I'm a digital business analyst currently based in the UK. As a digital practitioner, knowing that technology is growing at an exponential rate at the moment, what are some of the initiatives, as in the strategic thinking going forward, to ensure that we create a culture, a digital culture for Ghana's emerging technology and innovation sector, to ensure that we are forerunners as we go forward in Africa, not just regurgitating offline solutions online, but actually leading the way and being innovative. And also, in your digital journey as well, what has been some of the insights and some of the lessons learned that you've had so far?
Okay, I think I'll push that to Augustine.
All right. What is Ghana doing to ensure the culture of digitization is amplified? I think that's what I'm hearing you say. the first thing is for us to understand that in the past 40 or 30 years, digitization in many African countries have been from the back office perspective, where we are looking at how do we do things for the civil servants to improve efficiency. I think what we have to do now, what we are trying to do is to flip it around and focus on citizens' service reception, how the service delivered by government improve the life of citizens, make it easier for the citizen to save money and then receive the service. Once you flip it, the citizen then begin to demand the same advantages and opportunities that they receive in the private sector. They're going to begin to demand that from the government. And the government had no choice than to begin to comply. And this begins first by encouraging getting the citizen in, which is what we are doing first, the ID, getting in. And once you get the ID in, all the services today that uses an ID must then plug in. So that will lead to then seamless service delivery. So I, as a citizen wanting an electricity, I build a house, I need utilities to my house, should not have to go to ECG and water and post office, should be able to engage one portal, one interface, pay for that service and have government come in and set it up for me. When I have that ease of use in one sector of the government service delivery, then there's this expectation that if this sector of the government can do it, then why not other aspects of government doing it? That put pressure for automation, and as more citizens are asking for automation and the government is trying to comply with that citizen demand, then it creates more opportunity for the private sector to meet that demand by automating the services. Then you also have about how are we now beginning to deploy these services. The sharing economy, for example, is an area that the private sector has looked at. They cannot always come to the government and say, give me a contract, let me build this for you. There are a lot of needs, right? There are a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of problems. The technology space, have the tools, the engineering, the infrastructure to build a solution and provide it. Zipline is an example where Zipline says, I'm going to deliver emergency medical services, emergency medication, blood, and stuff like that to citizens in distress around the country within half an hour. Well, they did not come to government and say, give me a contract. They built it and say, government, I want you to leverage this infrastructure. Now, as the citizens begin to enjoy, again, it creates that demand because you are focused on the citizens' needs. And that's how you perpetuate that culture of continuing to automate over and over and over again.
Fantastic. Yes, the man.
Good afternoon. I'll introduce myself by my home name, which is Kwabna Sapong. And it's really, this question is addressed to my uncles and aunties in the front row. And it's to say that I want to make an observation. And the observation is this, that there's a massive opportunity to make an investment into my mindset and the mindset of my people and my brothers and sisters back home in Ghana. And I believe you can use tech and digital communication to do that. And the reason why we need an investment in the mindset of my brothers and sisters back home is because us young guys who will be investing in Ghana are terrified that when we make that sweat equity and that financial investment, we are dealing with people that are ready to knock us. And let me tell you what knock us means: to chop our money, to cheat us. And what I would love to see you do, and I say this in the best possible context because all I see here is blood relations, family. And in our culture, we don't wash our linen when there's non-family members present. But there's a massive opportunity to use tech to speak to our people that there's a huge wave of money coming. And when the money arrives, instead of knocking me, ask me, Charlie, do you have 20 cedis, 500? I'll give it to you, I'll give you more. But it's so painful when we make the investment in sweat and finance, and it feels like our nation is not ready or receptive to receive it. You don't invest in family members that are frivolous or not able to handle money. And my plea to the communications minister, to the government, and again to my uncles and aunties is start speaking to the youth and tell them that when the money arrives, be very careful. I've been doing business in Ghana for 20 years with my own money and most importantly with my sweat. And I can assure you I've condemned many family members and associates because they did not see the opportunity that I was bringing them, and years later I look at them and they've missed it. So let's use tech and digital communication, and the first form of communication is talking, explaining. I take pleasure in talking to my youth in Ghana to say, when the money comes, use it well, because we want to help and we want you to help us.
Thank you. I think that this is, for me, a comment, and your answer is in your own comment, because you started by telling us that we need to transform our mindset, and I think that is what, but I'll let Charles speak to that.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what you're saying, and definitely there are going to be some bad nuts out there in Ghana, but to give you a certain perspective, take my company, Dex Technology, for instance. We started with a $1,000 loan, $1,000 from my uncle. And last year, we made more than 1.5 million Ghana cedis in revenue. Now, it's not the case that we were special in any way. However, there are so many interventions currently going on in the country, so many training programs. There's the National Entrepreneurship Scheme, there's Tonelumelo Entrepreneurship, there's so many training programs going on, training young people, helping them understand how to manage money. In fact, when we started our company, within the first year, we had to get an auditor to audit our accounts, and this was advice that we got from engagement with folks at the NIP, National Investment, I don't know the name really well, National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program. Good. So, based on advice we got from them. So, there's change happening on the continent, and specifically in Ghana. I think I'm a good example, and I'm sure if you look really well and also collaborate with some of these government institutions, you can find really, really good organizations, really good startups that you can invest in. And these startups, mind you, are building businesses that are not succeeding only in Ghana, but businesses that are succeeding across the continent and across the world. Because you'd find that when you go through the constraints of Africa, the constraints of finance, the constraints of access, and you build a solution, all of a sudden you have in your hand a solution that you can implement anywhere on earth. Because everywhere people want solutions that are affordable. Everywhere people want solutions that are accessible. And these are the kind of solutions that are being created in Ghana on the African continent. And so I'm sure you'd find really good investments too.
Fantastic. One last one, then we go. Yes.
Hi, good morning. My name is Rajesh. I'm the founder of a company called Cloud Africa. I've been doing business in Africa for many, many years, and in fact, I really appreciate the speech that was given by the Honourable Lady there, talking about financial inclusion. My father's originally from Kenya, so M-Pesa, everyone knows, 13 years old, been and gone. I've been extremely fortunate enough to be doing business in Ghana for a very, very long time now, and one of the challenges I face here as a fintech entrepreneur in the UK is more to do with regulations, and KYC AML was mentioned earlier on the stage. So for someone that's got a remittance business that's trying to go live in Ghana, Gambia, Nigeria, and across Africa, I'm just looking to find out what exactly the central banks are doing in Ghana to support fintech startups here. I can tell you the FCA are making things very complicated for actually doing business and doing remittance in Africa, which I think it's been proven it's a fact. It's a vital lifeline for investment into the markets. If you look at the numbers last year, it exceeds FDI, and obviously it's going to be going up and up and up as more and more people, like the gentleman here, he's saying, when my money goes in, I want it to go somewhere, and I want it to be going somewhere that he knows is going to be valuable. So I fully appreciate that. You know, I've been in the market for many years, and I do understand some of the frustrations. So my question is, how is the BOG actually working with the FCA to help fintech entrepreneurs like myself to get a product actually to market and execute? And just to buttress that, my partners are very high-profile Ghanaians, including the president of the House of Chiefs in Ghana.
I guess maybe if you can do a quick response to that,
sure.
Then Moses.
I think he's talking about fintech. I had difficulties really understanding hearing what he was saying. But you're talking about fintech in Ghana.
Yeah, I mean, I'm talking more I'm talking more about collaboration between the regulators to help fintechs actually expose products to market.
Regulators, okay, very well. So the Bank of Ghana regulates the fintechs and GIPS. We recently, I think it's still in Parliament, the payment, yeah, maybe the minister will take that one.
I should, okay. So the minister will respond to this. Madam.
We just passed legislation last year to regulate electronic money and payment systems in Ghana under the auspices of the Bank of Ghana. We're working with the Information Technology Agency, which also regulates electronic transactions. And so all of that is linked with the Bank of Ghana, the Ghana Interbank Payments and Settlement Systems, and within that regulatory framework as well, we want to grow this fintech space. You don't want to stifle it, but you want to make sure that the monies and the deposits of ordinary citizens are also protected. So there's an elaborate system currently in place to ensure that this system is regulated lightly enough to encourage its growth, but to protect the funds that pass through the system. So it might be worth taking a look at that law, and then we can have some further conversations around it.
Okay, my job is done, and I want to thank Moses, Charles, and Augustine for your excellent responses and plugging in and downloading what you do. I must say that the minister was excellent and has given a picture of an e-Ghana, which we are all looking at. I would ask people, investors who are here, to look at what Ghana is doing and then come plug in and invest. Thank you very much. And
thank you very much, Mr. Bartels.